Hello and welcome to On The Perf podcast. It's a new podcast, and this is the introductory episode. Now, spoiler alert, this is not our first episode. We have recorded a few in advance before we decided that we're actually going to put this out to the world. So we're coming back to the beginning, kind of like Star Wars. We started at episode 4, and now we're coming back around. And we're going to kind of let you guys know a little bit about who we are, what we're about, and where this body of work is going to go. So, my name is Adam Maxwell, and with me today is my cohort, my good friend, fellow shooter, Adam Riser. Adam, say hi to the folks.
What's up, buddy? Hi, folks. How are you doing? Is that a soothing enough voice? That's all I got.
So, do you want to tell the story, or should I tell the story of how this started?
So I called Adam to talk me out of a bad idea.
That's literally how the text went.
Yeah, I sent him a text. I'm like, hey, man, I need to get on the phone with you. I have a terrible idea. The Good Idea Fairy visited me, and I need you to tell me not to do this thing. And called up Amax, and I was like, I had a great idea. We should do a podcast together. And instead of being like, you're an idiot, we don't have time for that, Amax here was like, that's a great idea, let's do it. To which I replied, fuck. So now we're doing a podcast.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, he's down. So yeah, basically we had a podcast. Our buddy Dave had the podcast.
Yes.
And we got to listen to Three Gun Shooting talk all the time, and it was awesome. Both me and the other Adam here had been on that enough times that the mic that Adam is talking into right now was bought for him by Dave just because he was on the show so much and they wanted audio quality to be better. So
yeah, in the early days of the Three Gun Show, I actually was using a gamer headset from my roommate, which made me sound like a terrible mouth breather, like even more so probably than I do now. And yeah, like Adam said, our name is both Adam, for those of you keeping score at home. So as Adam said, for a while in the sport, we had a great podcast in the Three Gun Show put on by our friend Dave Hartman. To our knowledge, all of that material, how many years do you think of show Dave did?
I think it was 7 years.
7 years of Three Gun Show podcast is still up. You can still find it. It's still out there. And, if you got a long enough road trip, might be worth a listen. But also, like in present day, both Adam and myself do get asked about Dave. Where is he? What he's doing? So for all those concerned, just quickly, Dave is okay. He's fine. He is alive. We do have proof of life.
I stayed at his place a few months ago and driving through
Wyoming.
Cheyenne,
Wyoming. Yep. So Dave moved out to Cheyenne, Wyoming for a job. Kind of, chapters of life brought him out there, and like many things, caught COVID and kind of died in 2020. And the Three Gun Show was one of those. It was really tough to make a full-time go at content creating for gun content. So Dave shifted his focus to freelance marketing work, and that is what he's currently doing out in Cheyenne. We hope he comes back to us someday. Maybe he'll even hopefully join our show here. But he is certainly our friend and mentor in the background, helping us with our horrible idea. But for those concerned,
I would
Dave
say
is okay.
He's our spirit animal.
He is our spirit animal. He's probably punching his computer screen right now listening to us.
It's like, you guys are bombing so hard already.
Yeah. But yeah, so for the folks who don't know, Adam, why don't you tell us the elevator pitch on who you are and what you're about?
So I will skip all of the not shooting stuff because it's very long, other than to say that I am mostly a climber and have focused on climbing my entire life. I used to be a guide. I worked in the climbing industry in one way or another pretty much my entire life. And the previous year, for most of 2023 and some of 24, I lived in a van with my wife, driving around climbing for 15 months, which is why nobody heard from me for a whole season. Outside of that,
And they're still married.
and we're still married. We didn't kill each other at all. Crushed it. Yeah, did pretty good. Pretty happy about that. That's actually the number one comment that I got from people when I would tell them what I was doing. Everybody was like, I could never do that with my wife. We'd kill each other in a week. Sorry. So, shooting wise, I have been shooting my entire life, like anybody who grew up on a farm has been doing, but very recreationally. In 2013, me and my buddy Eric Seo went to our first competition shooting match together, which was a somewhere between IDPA and USPSA, Bob's tactical indoor pistol match type thing. That snowballed very quickly into 2-gun. That snowballed very quickly into 3-gun. And since early 2014, I have been shooting 3-gun a lot. Somewhere to the tune of 7 to 10 majors a year for most years. And during that time in the middle, I worked for a suppressor company for a few years. That opened up some more opportunities for traveling to, bigger matches, things along those lines. I became a 3-gun instructor for the Tactical Performance Center. So when Ron Avery was still running TPC, Brian Nelson was out there full time. About the time Max Leograndis came on board, Aaron Brecky was an instructor there. A bunch of other people had come through.
It was kind of the gun sight era of TPC. Like that
early,
like when
less culty.
Yeah, but like when I'm forgetting his name. The guy, the gun sight guy that started it all.
I know who you're talking
Jeff
about.
Cooper.
I can't remember it either. There you go.
Jeff Cooper. So the era of TPC that was Jeff Cooper, Ken Hackathorn, Clint Smith, Pat Rogers, like the original Magnificent Seven of instructors that started there. That's the era in which Adam was an instructor at TPC during the height of its SUPS residency.
Yeah. So everything happened down in southern Utah there. So I was a student in the first 3-gun class that SUPS ever put on. Shortly after that, became a good enough shooter to make me worthy of being an instructor there, and I got invited to be an instructor. I had been a climbing guide and a river guide for quite a while before that, and so I was reasonably good at teaching stuff to people. I think I'm a better teacher than I am a shooter, personally, which is kind of a bummer. I sort of wish it was the other way around, because I'd like to be a slightly better shooter. Yeah.
Who was the instructor of the first 3-gun class at TPC?
Brian Nelson. Oh, gosh darn it, I'm blanking on his name. Local guy out here, firefighter. What the heck is his name? Craig Outson.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Brian Nelson and Craig Outson. And the third guy.
Was it Benny?
No. Younger shooter. He's probably in his mid 30s now. He moved down to South America, and now he's just doing hang gliding stuff. I am completely blank. I taught several classes with Brian and him, and I cannot remember his name to save my life right now. But anyways, he doesn't shoot anymore. But it was usually Brian and me and a rotating third instructor for the 3-gun classes down there. So
right on.
So me and Brian kind of grew the curriculum more or less together. I would say, Brian definitely is a more well-known shooter and had a little bit more to do with that, being that he lived there full time and that's all he did. But I would say the thing that the 3-gun course at TPC by the time I left was the brainchild of myself and Brian. And I thought it was quite good. We packed a lot of information in not very many days, and taught a lot of people through that class that went on to become really, really good 3-gun shooters. So I'm very happy about all the work we did there. So then let's see. So that was late 2016 was when all of that started. By about 2017, I would say I looked like what people consider to be a pro shooter. I had a jersey. I was teaching classes. I was shooting for Vortex and JP by that point, which I'm still doing to this day. I tell people that I'm a pro level shooter, meaning that I occasionally beat pro shooters, but I do not make a living at shooting. So whatever that means, however you wanna frame that, but I am a dude in a jersey with sponsors and everything that goes with it, for better or worse. And in these days, just shoot a bunch of 3-gun. Occasionally some USPSA, some NRL Hunter, some NRL 22s, some PRS, some skeet and trap, and whatever else sounds like fun, but primarily focused on 3-gun. I teach private classes primarily around the Salt Lake area still. I do a handful of group classes a year, and then I do free private clinics in the off season. Actually, I have one tomorrow at the Armory where a bunch of people just show up and it costs them a crisp high five, and they get to kind of do like a 3-hour quick, learn how to do whatever thing we happen to be working on that day. So that's where I'm at.
Wow, I just had a lot of deja vu thinking about all those years I had filed away there. So I would say the long, quick version on me. My name's Adam Maxwell. I found action shooting. I say I saw it on TV. I grew up in
Jerry got you, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I grew up in not a shooting household. My parents are not anti-gun. It just is not their thing. My dad was a once-a-year deer hunter. I grew up in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Both of my parents are from rural families, so they had rural upbringings. And so my dad's friends from college, a group of them would go deer hunting for the Minnesota Rifle Opener every year. And that weekend and a kind of scouting setup weekend was like the extent of hunting in our family, but that was my initial exposure. I was all about it, and so I got really into hunting in my middle school, high school years. Subscribed to all the magazines and all that stuff, and so in that era, in the 2000s, hunting television wasn't really a thing like it is now, where you could consume it all day long if you wanted to. It was one block of 4 hours on a Sunday night. There was a series of 4 or 5 shows, and the one that was the bookend to that segment was a show called American Shooter. American Shooter essentially covered all of the shooting sports. It exists today as Shooting USA. It's been rebranded, but it is the same show. It has not changed. It's a linear TV show that's 30 years old at this point. But that was my first exposure to the shooting sports, and that is the first place that I saw IDPA, USPSA, and 3-gun. And in 1999, that was when one of the episodes they showed Jerry setting the world records with his handgun. So when it was a contemporary thing, like it had just happened and they were covering it. I actually just found that it's a 7-minute segment. It's posted on Jerry's YouTube channel. I just saw it again the other day, and it gives me chills just thinking about it. But that was my exposure at, we'll say 12, 13 years old. But anything to do with handguns was kind of, you can do that when you're 21, was kind of my parents' response to it. I did have a good friend through the Boy Scouts. His dad had handguns, and his dad, my dad were cool and good friends. They're probably better friends now than they were then. But when my friend Steve, when his dad would take us shooting, his dad had some handguns. That was my first exposure to handguns. So I was starting to shoot handguns and stuff before I was 21, but I really couldn't participate in the action shooting sports until I turned 21 and could buy my own handgun. And that's what I did. I got into IDPA In about, I think it was 2007 was when I started shooting IDPA. And the attraction there was, what's old is new again, but IDPA, the attraction was it was kind of more simple, practical gear. So you used a conventional style holster, conventional style guns. So I started shooting a 1911 and 45, from concealment, in and around all that. Did that for several seasons, and then and this is kind of in my college years. How did I afford this during college? I didn't drink, which going to school in Wisconsin was a mystery to most of my friends. But anyway, in shooting IDPA, they were like, "Hey, if you like this, you should try 3-gun." And I was like, "What's 3-gun?" And they're like, "You should try 3-gun." And then this was round about the time that a show called 3-Gun Nation was also airing as well. So 3-Gun Nation got some money behind a pro series. And so about the time that the sport was really crescendoing into 3-Gun Nation, that was where I on-ramped into 3-Gun. And did it at the hobby level for a few years. My career was really in agriculture at that point. I was working for some commercial dairy farms at the time. And but kind of got to that age, kind of got some friends, liked 3-Gun enough where it was like, okay, and we liked the show, 3-Gun Nation, enough that there was kind of a semi-pro series to get on the pro series. So you kind of had to go to some of the national matches to try and qualify to be on the pro series. And I was like, well, might as well throw my hat in the ring and give that a try. And so that was when, there were only like 5 major matches at all during the season, and you had to shoot at least 3 of them. And so that second year was when I shot the now defunct Midwest 3-Gun Championship. That was at the CMMG range in Missouri. Ultimately, it became Missouri 3-Gun, and probably what offshot in probably the most linear version of what's still going is Generation 3-Gun. I shot Iron Man and Blue Ridge, and really got the bug from there. My career also transitions to a place I was kind of between jobs, and I had made some friends through shooting through the local USPSA scene that had a gun store. And so I was between jobs, wanted kind of something to do, and also wanted to diversify my skill set, which pretty much was a heavy equipment operator and truck driver at that point, in addition to my college education. But I was kind of trying to break out of that mold. And so I was like, I needed to develop another skill set. So I asked my friends who had a gun store. I was like, hey, could I pick up some hours at at the store so I could build my resume, really, is what I was trying to do. And they weren't really looking for anybody at the time. But yeah, we'll find you some hours. Turned into part-time, turned into full-time. Before long, I was a key holder. And so I worked at a retail gun store that's still active today. It's called Arns and Arms in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, if you're ever in the area. But I worked at Arns and Arms for 5 years as a frontline retail salesperson, while also participating in 3-Gun locally. At that time, I was a match director for our local club. At the peak of all that, I did 33 events a year, between match directing, weekend events, and weeknight leagues. And then in and around all that, that's where I made friends. My friend Ruben, who was the one of us who first got the job at Vortex. So Ruben was working at a Shields store, met the Vortex rep, who is now the VP of sales, and essentially got recruited down to Vortex. And for a while there, we had a bit of a Minnesota insurgency down to essentially Madison, Wisconsin, where Vortex is based. Every time they needed somebody and they started asking around the office, Ruben would start pulling people in like, hey, you should apply for this. Hey, you should apply for this. And I was one of the friends that got looped into that. So one Friday night, I got a phone call from another friend, Ryan, who's also still there. But Ryan said, hey, they're looking for somebody. You need to have your resume to this place by Monday morning. And I did. And then kind of the rest was history. So I took a job at Vortex, which was a customer care position, which is akin to kind of sweeping floors in the office, but it's a good entry level position. But customer care is, broken stuff, angry people, shipping labels, missing parts. My dot's not a dot, all that stuff. My scope doesn't track. I did customer care for 9 months, and then moved laterally into an open position, somebody in what we would call consumer sales, which people would more readily recognize as tech support. One of those guys moved out of consumer sales into law enforcement sales. I moved laterally into his spot. Did that role for another 9 months, but really liked working with military and law enforcement customers. So I wrote an email a week for 6 months asking for the next available position into law enforcement sales. And eventually I got it, and that's where I currently am. I'm one of the account managers on the military law enforcement sales team, and that's primarily my day job focus at Vortex. And then in and around all that, an approved extracurricular activity is participating in the action shooting sports. So I'm very quick to point out that shooting 3-gun is not my job. It's not in my job description. It's not in anybody's job description at Vortex. It's something, like I say, it's an approved extracurricular activity for those who want to put the work in to do it. And so that has really been the springboard for me to continue to participate in the sport as I have. When I first came to Vortex, I actually made it onto the 3-Gun Nation Pro Series. That was the second year I was on the Pro Series. Which was essentially a made-for-TV match, if you will. But then pretty much kind of similar to Adam Riser, I shoot 7 to 10 major matches a year all over the country in 3-gun, PCSL, tactical shotgun, now a lot of USPSA as well, USPSA pistol. And so I also say I shoot 3-gun and pistol at the pro level. I would not say I'm a pro. And that was one of the things I'm really glad Adam highlighted that. I don't know that there's very many. Actually, I do know there are not very many people in our space that we would call real pro shooters. There are lots of people who get help, and it's a part of their role in the industry. But like a real pro like someone who their full-time job is perfecting the craft of 3-gun and winning matches, there are not very many of those. I could say the AMU, the Army Marksmanship Unit, those guys are legit pros.
Yeah, I was just going to say, outside of the AMU, even people that you would consider to be pros, like Jerry, Daniel
Horner,
Joe Farewell, like they make a living with the gun, but they don't get paid to go to matches and win. They make a living with a gun. So a lot of training, product development, they like work as a marketing arm for a, company, like things along those lines. Like there's very, very few people that are actually what you would consider to be pro in any other sport outside of the AMU. And they're kind of pro, but they're in the military, and that's their job in the military. So
I mean, there's I think SIG has a few of them. Like Daniel, Lena, Max Michelle, Mason Lane.
They even still have other responsibilities.
But they have have other responsibilities.
The SIG team, I think, is outside of the Army. I think is the closest you can come to an actual pro team these days.
Yep.
And even those guys aren't just going to the range and shooting a pallet of ammo every day. Like they have other stuff going on.
Yep. Absolutely not. And that's where I probably have one of those jobs that's probably about as close to pro as you can get. But nowhere in my job description is it shoot 3-gun and win 3-gun matches. That's kind of a a tertiary thing. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I'm in a phone queue. I'm accountable to an email inbox. It's military and law enforcement sales that really drives the bus. But our participation in the sport is a good networking tool. We meet lots of people. All the customer facing stuff of sponsoring the shooting sports. And then also I can bring what we learn in the competition shooting realm to the law enforcement realm, both in understanding of product, so it helps me as a salesperson know and understand what the product is for, explain to people pros, cons, advantages, disadvantages, to help them with a buying decision. It also, as we develop future products, they bring us in like, hey, we get people from all over the shooting sports. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And what the 3-gun guys want is different than what the PRS guys want, is different than what the hunting guys want, is different than what the bird watching people want. It's multifaceted what the value is for us to participate in the sport. But actually, like, oh yeah, he's a pro shooter and he goes and all the practicing that I do on my own time. I do it after 5 o'clock. As everybody's leaving, I'm heading down to the range. And I usually have the range to myself. So it's still a midnight oil project. But yeah, so that's me. Like I say, I'm currently a salesperson at Vortex Optics. And then we're also participating in the sport on the side. I shoot at the pro level, similar to Adam. I think I'm in the pro realm, and I can challenge for a win, but it's competitive at the top. So I'm one of the people you have to beat to be up towards the top, and I think Adam kind of sees himself in the same light too.
Yeah. We talked about this on a previous show, which will now be like 6 episodes from now, because this one's gonna actually be the first one to drop, but. I described people like me and Maxwell as second-tier shooters, where there are a few people in the country that I can think of off the top of my head. That number is somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on divisions and things like that we're talking about. That if I'm not going to beat them. I do not have the time, nor the resources, nor the miles behind me to beat Daniel Horner at a major match. It's just not going to happen.
Come on, he's getting older.
He's getting older. I mean, I had to wait until Jerry was in his mid-60s before I could beat him. So when Dan's in his 60s, Dan might be younger than me. So I don't think this is going to work out. But and then the problem is now you have people like Verrett coming up, which is, as Jerry says, we need to get that man a wife and a mortgage. Otherwise, he's going to be a problem for a while. But yeah, so like second tier shooter, if none of those top 5 people in the country show up, I have a really good shot at winning. So I started off in limited. I had some major match wins there. I decided there wasn't enough competition in limited and I really wanted competition. So then I switched to TAC during the heydays of TAC Ops, which also coincided with the 3-Gun Nation Pro Series. So everybody with any meat on the bone was shooting TAC Ops those days. And Open was kind of the retirement home division at the time. Like there were a few good open shooters. It was. Yeah, and like there was a few good open shooters out there. Like Jerry was just shooting TAC on the Pro Series, but he was shooting open the rest of the time, things like that. But outside of a couple people, most of the matches that I shot in TAC, if I would have bumped to open at the end of the match, I would have won. Like the majority. I actually went back through practice score to check and make sure that when I told people that story, that wasn't bullshit. But like more than 50% of the matches when I shot TAC and finished second or third place, I would have won open division. That's not the case anymore. So I had a couple major match wins in TAC, switched to open a couple years ago. I started to go. And I couldn't see iron sights at the speed that you needed to anymore, so I switched to open, and very handily that coincided with a lot of heat moving to open, because now we have things like open shotguns that run, which was the big thing. We got slide ride dots on pistols, so you don't have to have some weird minor but sort of USPSA-ish open gun with a race holster and stuff like that. So the things that kept people out of open kind of went away, and now everybody has kind of gone in that direction. A lot of the super top heat is an open, so it's super rare now that the open division guy who wins open doesn't actually win a match overall. But so in that time between 2014-ish and now, this is end of 2024 minus a year off, I had to add them all up a while ago. So I think I have 5 major match wins and 20-something podium finishes. I can't remember exactly the number, but around there, a little over 20. Somewhere in that neighborhood, mostly in TAC and open. And but there's a couple people that I just can't beat, which would be, beat them on a couple stages, but I just can't beat them in a match.
Well, I look at it a little bit different than Adam. I kind of look at it as hardware and software. So like hardware wise, skills, draws, reloads, execution, stage design or stage planning, all that stuff. I would say we're as good as anybody. And that's what, like, if you look at it as, like, in the USPSA classification system, like, Grandmaster is a defined thing that you can get. If you have the component skills to do it, you are a Grandmaster. But just because you're a Grandmaster and you shoot 95% of the world in, standard exercises, that doesn't always translate into match performance and match skills. Those are more software skills. Like, in motorsports, they call it racecraft, all right? So, like, you can drive fast, you can ride fast, but actually putting it down in a race or in a match, that's something a little bit different. And that's where that has something to do with, how prepared are you or aren't you? What do you have going on in the rest of your life or not? And that's where, like, if we look at some of these younger guys or, pros like the AMU, like, they have, we're good friends with the AMU, all right? So don't see us as talking adversarial about them. But it's their full-time job to show up ready and win. That's their job. All right? So some of us who have other jobs, other things going on in life, everybody's got stuff going on in life. But to what extent is that stuff distracting you from being prepared for this match? That goes into it. How do you manage yourself, your energy, your nutrition, your hydration, all that stuff? That goes into how you perform at a match. And then also the other thing about a match is only one person gets to win. So winning or not winning a match isn't completely up to you. It's you got to struggle less than everybody else. And it's somewhat contingent on how other people do. So there's a lot of us swimming around towards the top there that could have a good match, but the trifecta of the skills, the life balance, and then actually bringing it and putting it down at a match. I mean, you might be a better person than me and a great father of 5 and have a house, a vacation house, and a Raptor at home, but there's no points for that in 3-gun. Like, it only matters what you showed up with today. Did your equipment work? Did you have a good plan? Did you execute? It's all got to come together to win. And I think, like, on component skills, Adam and I think we have a lot to share with folks who are in the sport or looking at getting in the sport. That's a lot of our motivation towards putting some of this information out there. Actually what you win, what you don't win, that's not entirely up to you. In 2017, I was a limited shooter as well, and I won pretty much everything there was to win that year in limited. I didn't count. I am not prepared to say how many I won, but I won a couple 3-Gun Nation regionals, the Shooter Source match down in Texas, a couple others, but I have won major level matches. I started out in the pistol sports. I started in CDP, custom defense pistol, which we would recognize as single stack now. So I started as a single stack shooter. When my interest moved towards 3-gun, everybody was shooting TAC optics, so that's what I shot. I had a little foray into limited, and I would actually even today I would identify as a limited shooter. It's probably my favorite. But in and around that era was when I moved to Vortex, and so it just didn't make sense that if you're participating and representing an optics company at matches, to participate in the division that used the least amount of optics. So I jumped from limited to open, and I shot open for a couple years, and it was never really my favorite, but I was there for a while, and then more recently, the division of modified, as people are looking for kind of a open light, something we can shoot red dot pistols that aren't compensated in major and big sticks. As modified came online, I won't say it was my idea, but I was heavily involved in
definitely fall into the driving force category. Like, I think you and Dave Hartman were sort of the initial push.
If there was a painting of the Last Supper of everyone who created modified division, I would be like on Jesus's right, probably. All right.
So who's Jesus, Dave?
I don't know. I don't want to say, but I just want to say I'm kind of towards the middle, but I'm in there.
I will point out that you guys were one season late, because if modified became a thing before I switched to open, I definitely would have switched to modified, because all that would have cost me is a red dot on a shotgun that I had that already took a red dot. Instead, I had to buy a $5,000 open shotgun. So you guys could have been about 12 months faster and saved me a lot of money. That would have been nice.
It was no small mountain to move, that's for sure. But primarily now, in 3-gun, I shoot modified division. It's where I intend to stay for a little bit.
He's still hiding from me.
Yep. In USPSA, I'm a grandmaster in 3 divisions. Currently, as we record this, I'm a GM in limited optics, limited, and single stack. I am knocking on the door in limited 10, and we're going to get it done one way or the other, because they just voted to allow optics into limited 10. So I'm going to do that one. And then I also thought revolver was a good idea, so I'm going to see what revolver shooting is like. I'm currently fighting with my revolver. And I don't know. Well, it's a long winter yet, so we might even classify in production. But I'm a GM currently in 3 divisions, and then I'm kind of a 90%er in 3-gun sports on the national stage as it currently exists.
So I'd say that let's just jump in a little bit to reasons for the podcast. So one, I think, was just kind of, a little bit of boredom. I got back from my trip. It's been a few months. I haven't been working yet. I start in January up at my new job, but I kind of didn't have anything to do, and I thought this was a good idea, which is going to be a real bummer when I have an actual job and I'm not made out of time anymore. But mostly, so Maxwell and I both have YouTube channels and social media outlets that I would say concentrate on things that most don't concentrate on. So we both have a very educational direction to our content. My stuff, I would say, is very heavily pointed towards skill development, mental management, tactics in 3-gun, things like that. So I have things like all of my social media is just Adam Riser. So I have a YouTube channel where I have these match lesson videos, and basically I take like a part of a stage and I do a little voiceover thing, and I talk about why I did a thing, why it worked out, why it didn't work out, what I'm going to change the next time, different options for this same thing. It's all just little clips of stages, trying to help people get better at what they do. I do a lot of instruction. I do a lot of classes. I'm basically spending all of my time trying to help people get better at shooting, because I want there to be more 3-gun shooters, and I want more of them to be better, because it hurts my feelings when I see somebody making really classic beginner mistakes, 2 or 3 or 4 years into a shooting career because nobody ever explained to them not to do that thing. Adam has a similar but different kind of social media. I'll just let you explain yours, but I would say more heavily oriented towards the gear knowledge side of things.
Yeah, and we go back a little bit to the Three Gun Show, and in the vacuum created by that show ending, I had a need for I guess I'll say a creative outlet. No one reads blogs anymore. I actually like to write, but no one would read it. So kind of had a need for an outlet, and talking to some of my other friends and colleagues in the industry, they're like, "Hey, man, you should really start, a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that." And so I had one from way back in the day when it was kind of rare that people would post themselves on YouTube. Shooting stages, and that was that was a easy check on the box for what sponsors wanted to see. But I got it going again as kind of a platform to put out some information, because I also, and we'll probably talk about it, I don't know, I reference it quite a lot because it was kind of a influential chapter in my life. But I went through a major injury. I broke my leg in spectacular fashion. Will we say a couple years ago now? Yeah, a couple years ago. And so I was laid up on the couch for 18 weeks, non-weight bearing for 18 weeks. And so I watched all of the YouTube. And a couple times, I had a question, our generation, the millennial generation, now Gen Z, when we want to find something out, we go to YouTube as our encyclopedia.
Wait, hang on. Back up. Don't use the word "we" there. I was born in 1980.
Are you an Xer?
I am an Xer. So don't you be putting me in this millennial bullshit.
So
let's clarify some stuff here.
Thank you. So we have 3 generations now of people that go to YouTube as an encyclopedia, which was really my point. And I would go down some rabbit holes trying to find videos on stuff, and there was stuff that I just couldn't find. Or I would have some obscure thing, and I would find a really crappy video of somebody who's not very good at making videos, but they would have the information that I needed. That was how I found Atlas Gunworks back in the day. All right, I was trying to figure out why single stack shooters shot 40 Smith & Wesson. I found this video from this place called Atlas Gunworks before anybody had ever really heard of them, and you can see what happened. And so there's just kind of some of this obscure tribal knowledge that I think would really help folks in their journey if they're interested in doing this kind of stuff. And, a lot of it was stuff that I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. If I had access to this, I would be so much farther along. And so I kind of, on the information, the stuff that I choose to talk about on my YouTube, is usually kind of in that vein. It's hey, it's kind of encyclopedia stuff. Hey, if somebody's trying to figure out, what to look for in a single stack 1911 for competition. All right, there's all kinds of stuff you can find about fighting 1911s.
Good example. Adam posted up, I don't know, about a month ago or something now, probably a 40-minute long video that was pretty much everything that you ever considered wanting to know about 2011 magazines.
Yes.
The whole video was just magazines, just the magazines. And I really wish that video existed 9 years ago when I bought my first 2011. It would have saved me so much dicking around.
Yes, because back then your only option was to send it to a quote-unquote gunsmith in the mail, and they would quote-unquote tune your mags. They wouldn't tell you what they were going to do. This
straight voodoo on the other side.
Yeah, it was black magic, and that lives on to this day. People are like, "Oh yeah, 2011s, you gotta you have tuned magazines and blah blah blah." It's well, no, STI just made shitty magazines at the time, and some guys kind of figured out how to make them work, and it's just that kind of stuff where it's hey, if you just watch this kind of stuff, if you could look at these couple of things, when someone pulled back the curtain for me, and I actually oh, that's all they do? And Atlas Gunworks was big on this. They showed, a lot of times they would show you how to do something instead of having you send it back. They're like, hey, it's really easy to fix. We'll make a video for you quick, and you decide if you want to do it yourself or you want to send it back in. And so in that kind of vein, it was like, hey, like, here's some information that I just wish somebody would have told me, but I didn't really have anybody in my circle that was really into guns the way I was that could give me that tribal knowledge. And so if putting it out there helps somebody else be more successful, as Adam said, that's more people having fun in 3-gun and action shooting. That helps the action shooting sports grow. And ultimately, a thriving and sustainable action shooting community is what we want, because, man, we would like to just kind of stay in that world as long as possible, given the alternatives. So, creative outlet is a big reason why we do this, and that's why when Adam approached me about this, he's like, hey, I'm starting my YouTube. I've been watching your YouTube. We're kind of doing similar things. Maybe we should just do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah. And kind of what I learned when I committed to putting content out on my YouTube was, like, I knew from some of the marketing stuff that I had done, like, you don't just want to throw something out every time you have an idea. Like, you kind of want to have a consistent flow. And you kind of want to make sure that you don't run out of ideas. So one of my holdouts for a long time of putting stuff out was I wasn't sure that I could come up with enough ideas to keep it going. But once I started, I was like, man, I have more ideas. I just keep a list of them, and, like, I'm like 7-8 ideas deep in stuff that I want to put out there. And so between our individual stuff and then stuff we want to talk about here on this podcast, I just feel like we have a lot of information to share with people that could enrich everyone's experience if you're a little ways behind us on the trail, looking to get up to our level.
Yeah, and on that same page, I'd say if there's anything, we're going to drop this. The first 4 episodes are going to drop all at once. Then we'll be rolling them out 1 week after that. We got some questions. We've both reached out to some people and started answering stuff. But yeah, if you have questions, hit either one of us up on social media. All of my stuff is just Adam Riser. What's all your stuff, Maxwell?
My stuff's all 3-gun AMAX or 3gun_AMAX, or there is a On The Perf podcast at gmail.com, which once this stuff starts airing, I will start looking at. And if you have ideas or questions of stuff you want us to ask, really the audience is the direction of the show. Stuff that people are interested in and interacting with is stuff we'll do more of.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, part killing time, part creative outlet, but mostly I would say just kind of I don't know, customer services. And what's the phrase I'm looking for? Helping out in the community.
I would say it's community stewardship.
There we go. Sure. Community stewardship.
Kind of like
we've learned a lot of things in our years. We each have about a decade in the sport. When did you start?
07.
07. All right. So you even have a few years on me. So we got like 25 years between the two of us. And I would say that we have seen / done just about every wrong thing that you can do.
Oh yeah.
We've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And if we can shortcut some people's growth and skill in the sport, then that's what we're here for.
And I would also say that none of it, I don't know about you, but none of it came naturally to me. Like, I would not describe myself as an athletically gifted person. I had to struggle through and work through it all. I got everything I have the hard way. I didn't come from a shooting dynasty that bought me all the right stuff right away and coached me the right way at the right time when I was at my my physical peak and all that stuff. I earned it all the hard way, and if like I said, not everybody's game for the hard way. So if we can we can help some folks along the way to get to the fun part of the sport, because the struggle, everybody goes through the struggle, but how long do you wallow there? If we can get people past the struggle phase and into the having fun stage, I think that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that's probably about right for a quick intro show. A little bit of who and a little bit of why. You got anything? You got anything to add?
We were trying out this catchy catchphrase, so I don't know. Maybe you tell us what you think. But man, Adam, if you are finished,
I hate you. I hate you.
keep those overlay cards handy, everyone. This is the On The Perf podcast. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you out there.